Hello Year 10 and welcome back to another video to do with your history work for while you're at home. Today we're going to be looking at this question here. Can I explain how Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany by creating a flowchart? I'm going to talk you through the background to this. I'm going to give you an idea of where everything lies before Hitler manages to take charge. But then after that, I'm going to leave it generally up to you to work it out and to do the flowchart itself, because it's quite a self-explanatory task and it means it's quite easy for you to get on with. So, there were lots of things that happened in a very short space of time that enabled Hitler to become the Chancellor of Germany. And a few of these things we've already kind of gone through to start with already when we're talking about the Weimar Republic and why the Nazis gained popularity. And that's the kind of starter activity, okay? So the starter activities that we're going to talk about, first of all, is the propaganda that Hitler and the Nazi Party used, which was particularly effective, okay? We should know what propaganda is. We actually did it in Year 9, but we've also talked about it a little bit in the in this section when we're talking about the posters that the Nazi Party created. We've also talked about the economic issues that were going on in Germany and the hyperinflation. That's this photograph here of the girls that are eating. That's to symbolise the economic issues and the fact that money became worthless. You've also got Hitler himself and the speeches that he used to do, and how much of an effective public speaker Hitler actually was, and why him going out and doing these rallies and gaining that support was very important. We also have the SA, or the stormtroopers that Hitler's Nazi Party had, who would pressure people into these rallies and pressure people to take part, and also put pressure on people to join the Nazi Party and vote for the Nazi Party at votes, so at elections. So the SA are particularly important, having your own militia, essentially, that are going to go and do what you want them to do and force people to do things. Really quite useful if you want to get lots of things done. And the last thing here is the general election voting as well, where they shot in popularity from 1928 to 1932. Okay, so explain how these may link to each other, explain why Hitler and his party became much more popular. Use the information that we looked at last lesson and in the last video as well to help you with that, but just give a few links between them. The next section is the context. Okay, so first of all, we need to talk about the political issues of Germany at this time. In Weimar Germany, there are lots of political parties, about 30. Okay, now in our country now, in Britain, we have 3 main parties mainly, and we have a few independents and a few other pressure group parties that kind of put pressure on the government, but only really 3 parties or 2 that actually get elected. And it was really rare in Germany for parties to get a coalition, to get a majority, sorry. So they rarely ever gained complete control of the government itself. If you've got a majority, then that means you have enough votes in the Reichstag in this case, or the House of Parliament, to get your policies put straight through. So let's say, for example, you wanted to make a policy where you, let's say, banned mobile phones across the country, just outright ban them. If your party believed that and everybody in your party agreed with you and you had a majority in government, all you'd need is everyone in your party to say, yep, we want to ban them, and the law would be put through generally. However, this works really, really well for lots of different policies and lots of things that the Nazi Party would have wanted to put in, and lots of other things that other parties would have wanted to put in. But this rarely ever happened. And instead, you got a coalition government. And this means that you would have to side with another party that might have similar views or might have totally different views. And you would have to hope that that party would also vote with you. Okay? So if you don't have over 50% of the votes in Parliament, you would have to hope that another party would vote with you. And this creates a massive amount of arguments. And it creates a massive amount of uncertainty because you can never really guarantee that your policy is actually going to be put through if you've not got a majority. And so that means that it's a lot harder for parties to put through what they want to do through the House of Parliament and make the laws and all that stuff, because you're relying on someone else to also agree with you. In Germany as well, to make it even more complicated, a Chancellor, who basically ran the House of Parliament, so like our Prime Minister, they are chosen from the coalition. But because coalition governments often disagreed with each other, as I said, very little was done and the Chancellor didn't have a lot of power. The President, however, the President is someone that's above the Chancellor. They are not connected to a political party technically. They are completely removed. A bit like our Queen in this country now. They could use Article 48 of the Constitution to appoint new chancellors in emergencies. And this becomes really important because in 1932 to 1933, they could not work out who should be the chancellor. They could not get the main party to actually agree with each other and vote the same way. They could not get votes through, and the parliament was basically stuck. And so the president at the time used Article 48 to put in a new chancellor who he thought might be a lot more decisive. And on the 30th of January 1933, Hindenburg did exactly that, and he appointed Adolf Hitler as chancellor in 1933. And that begins it kind of ends the beginning of Hitler taking charge, because now he is given total power and he can use Article 48 to create his own laws to then have other people removed and mean that he completes and stays in power for, well, Hitler thought, for the rest of his life, which is technically true. So, the question is, how was that able to happen? Okay, this is the context. Now you need to look at the finer details. So, on the next slide here, you have this flowchart, which is also a little document itself. You can print this off or you can fill it in on here. Either way, it's entirely up to you. But you would need to try and fill in this flowchart to show how Hitler got to be appointed Chancellor in 1933. You must include the various elections, the other chancellors, and the key decisions that were made. So you may be looking at this and going, I actually don't know any of this information. Where am I going to find this from? Not an issue. Okay, so what you will need to do is you will need to look in the folder here, and it says information from textbook. This is the information from the textbook, and you can go through and you can see what happens in each of the dates. So July 1932, November 1932, and then what happens in 1933. You'll need to read through it all. You'll also need to talk about the chancellors who are at the bottom here and President Hindenburg there, and this will enable you to fill in this flowchart. If you read it through, it will become really, really obvious, I promise. If you finish that, there is a kind of end challenge, which is describe 2 problems Hitler's faced as Germany's leader when he became Chancellor in 1933. It's a 4-mark question, but I'm not expecting that to be done as an exam question. It's mainly just to check that you understand where this could fit into an exam question. Because if we go back to this sheet here, week 1, lesson 2, it just says plan the answer to the 4-mark question. So you don't need to write it as an exam answer, but it's just to give you an idea of where this stuff could fit into the exam. So, I hope all that made sense. I hope that you understood all of it. If you need any help, please email me or chat to me on Teams. But apart from that, thanks again for watching Year 10, and the main thing is stay safe.